unleashing the CFO in you, which is really understanding. And while financials, when we talk about, it's very broad, there is balance sheet, cash flow. But from a sales standpoint, what is the key piece of information that we will uh, briefly touch base upon today would be about understanding the profit and loss statement or P&L, which will help you in your journey and in your career as you grow in the sales organizations or in sales roles, become a better salespeople. Now, just a caveat here, a lot of the context of this conversation will be around FMCG, consumer product side of things, but it doesn't matter which business, and this is because that's where I come from. But it doesn't matter which business you are in, which industry you are in, whether it's B2B, B2C, whether it's consumer, the fundamentals remains the same. So what we're going to talk about is really the fundamentals. So yeah, so numbers, and especially most of us wears the sales hat. Numbers, people think about target, which is your sales number. You think about your deal structure, but and then the point here is there is no one answer. So depending on who you speak to, numbers really means different things to different people. So, but at the genesis of these things is numbers is really about business. What drives your business, right? With that intent, one of the things and one of the key important numbers when we look about business is really about, to your point, Abhijit, profitability, income, business drivers, and which is what PNL is all about. So we're going to talk about today understanding the PNL. I'll just go through certain key concepts within the PNL items that is important from you guys for you guys, but also what is decision making about when you use PNLs in sales. So before I get into the thing, what is the most important? And now let's think broad, okay? When you talk about business, what is the most important aspect? What is the fundamental question anybody, any stakeholder, including yourself, asks? The fundamental question which leads to all of this is, to me, is really about what's in for me, right? When any customer, any human being, if you think about the psychology of a human being, everything we do is trying to figure out, what is in for me? Why should I do it? What is it that I am going to get? Why should I, engage with this customer and not this customer? Why should I buy from this salesman? And why should I sell? And why should I become a salesman? All of this, the fundamental question in a business is what's in for me. And when you strictly look at from a customer or a company or a salesperson angle, the answer to that comes down to very simple core thing, which is really about driving my business and hence profit, which is a lot of you guys said. So all of it, that whatever it is that we are trying to do, I mean, you guys as a sales, we as sales team, we are trying to drive business to sell more so that A, to some of your points, we'll achieve our target, or B, we would get our, we will increase our commissions, and then we will want to grow, and hence all of it. For a customer, they engage with the right products, with the right companies, because they want to also sell better to their customers, or they want to do better in their business. So at the end of it, business and profit is very, very basic and very, very core in anything and everything we do. Yeah. Which is why, and when you talk about profit, and that's the biggest misconception, or not a misconception, the biggest gap in most of the salespeople, in my experience, was, I think the understanding of profit is very different depending on who you speak to. So some, for them, say profit is equal to sales numbers that they have sold, or profit is equal to just revenue, or profit is beyond that. It's really about your end-to-end business and what it takes to drive your end-to-end business. Yeah. So why it is, and which is where, and that end-to-end business is represented through nothing but a P&L statement. The understanding of what drives the overall business is what in simple terms is what a P&L statement is all about. Okay, so why it is important? It will help you think better from the customer lens, and hence it will help you strengthen your relationship and eventually you will be able to drive sustainable sales. It will help you give a big picture about your business levels, and we will talk about that in the next couple of slides. When you the company that you represent, or the company, if you are an entrepreneur and or an aspiring entrepreneur who wants to drive sales for your company, having an understanding of the levels of P&L will help you get a bigger picture in designing your sales strategy. And of course, and we will talk a lot about decision making using P&L will help you drive win-win situations with the customers. So before we get into how to use it, let's understand what, in a very simplified manner, what is a P&L, right? So this is just an example. Don't worry about the numbers here, but it's like I said, for me, the example is really these examples are really for consumer products where there is an MRP and then you basically go for that. But really, the line items on your left hand side here, it's pretty much the same across any P&L items. So really, you start with your price to the customer or the end consumer, which is in our case MRP. There and between the MRP and your gross revenues is your distributor margins, your base retailer margins. Then you deduct taxes and any top up discounts that you do, and which gets you arrive to a net revenue. Okay. So net revenue is really the net of all the sales, MRP sales minus your distributor margins or any base margins or retailer margins, and then minus all the discounts. It's your net revenue. Then you get into your cost of goods sold. Sorry, I should have really spelled this out. Or basically, what is the cost of revenues that is directly, what is the expenses that is directly related in generating this revenue. So I'll give you a consumer, let me use a Coke example, it's easier. So for me, this line would represent what is it the cost of making a cola, right? The cost of sugar, the cost of bottle, the cost of the lines, that it takes to produce and manufacture. So this is really about manufacturing expenses, your back-end logistics, your raw materials that it requires. So basically, depending on if you are in a physical product industry, this will be a higher percentage of it. If you're in a service industry, this may not even exist because your gross profit margin would be pretty much in line with your revenues. Okay, and this is where the gross profit comes in. This so far up until the consumer price to the gross profit is what we call the unit economics, or you must have heard the term, or if not, it's really the gross profit is directly related to the specific products that you are trying to sell. So it is the cost of, so if I'm selling let's say a packet of chips, up until the gross profit, what is that margin I'm getting, or what is the profit I'm making in that one bag of chip? So it is related to that, which is why we call it unit economics. Then when you come down, there is an overall company expenses, which is R&D, and we will get it, and I'll double click on some of these lines. There is R&D, there is marketing, there is people cost, which is really overall company expenses, which is how at a company level you arrive at an operating income, which is basically what most people call bottom line, and this is really your top line. So in a very simplified manner, a P&L really is about your revenues, your cost of manufacturing, and then your overall company expenses. So at the end of it, after making all your sales, after covering for all your overheads, fixed, variable, all your marketing expenses, are you as a company profitable or not? And we will talk about it, how you can use this understanding better when you talk to your customers, when you talk to or when you design your own sales strategy. Beyond that, let me also introduce some margin ratios, which is, and a lot of this might be very basic for you guys. Your gross profit margin is really how profitable it is for you to sell that one pack of chips that I was talking about, or one bottle of Coke that I was talking about. It's really your gross profit divided by net revenue. Contribution margin, now contribution margin, and I apologize, it's very unique to consumer product, and it's commonly used in consumers and in the consumers D2C startups sort of environment. But it's also basically you removing all your fixed overheads. Basically, aapka, whatever your sales structure, your salaries, your rent, your assets, your vehicles, if you have. Your contribution margin is basically gross profit minus marketing, and the reason it is marketing is because the marketing is very specific to the revenues you're trying to generate. Hence, what is the contribution margin of the product? If you don't understand this, it's not an issue. It's not a very commonly used. Most commonly used margins across the industry is gross profit and operating margin. Basically, operating margin is how much income per net revenue are you making. So the gross profit margin, let's say the industry is operating, your industry is operating at 15%. So I cannot really, expect to make much more than that. So if I want to retain a gross profit margin of, let's say, 15%, and eventually I want to also make money in the end of it. So you will have to understand, okay, what are my fixed costs, which is people cost, manufacturing cost, what are my variable costs, and what is it that I am expected from the industry to do. So if the industry is not at beyond a certain point, I cannot expect to grow margins beyond, let's say, 15%. So if I have to retain 15%, will I be able to cover my fixed cost, which is your operating expense line, right? If not, then what is the margin I would need to take so that at an operating income level, I am still positive. Hence, and then you will back calculate your price to the customer here so that it flows through. So at some point, you will have to, in the equation of deciding the price, you will have to take one constant. So constant goal. Is it about selling more at the cost of operating income, or is it about being positive at an operating income, and hence I increase my margin, but it can also impact my sales because the industry is operating at a lower margin. So there is no fixed formula and there is no magic formula. It's an art, but the art becomes a lot easier if you understand the overall business structure. So if you are in an industry where the fixed cost is very high, or your dependency on external commodities is very high, you will always need to relook at your pricing basis the intent of protecting your income and your profit, right? So that's how I will look at it, where you say you have to decide what is it that you're keeping constant and going after. So a lot of startups that I work with, or when I was consulting with them, they basically say, okay, I am still in the phase of, you know, uh, developing my product, or building my product. So I will not be able to cover up my fixed cost expenses because my sales are not that high. So I will take a hit in my operating income temporary for next 2 3 years, but I want to grow my net revenues and I want to make a healthy gross profit margins, which is why the key thing in my advice to all you guys, when you are working in a product, whatever that might be, try to make sure that at a unit economic level, which is your gross profit level, you are not making losses in selling your product. So now what I'll do is, once we understood the basic flow of the P&L, what I'll also try to do is just get into the couple of key terms that you will frequently hear it or use it. First is the top line, which is very, very straightforward yet, but I would still like to call out. It's really about the revenue line. So what you saw in the previous slide, the net revenue is what we call top line. And however, sometimes it is confused with cash. Top line is not equal to cash. Okay, cash is a separate. Cash comes from very different sources. It can also come from revenues, but it also comes from your financing, which is your loans. It also can come from sale of assets, prepaid services. So revenue shouldn't be confused with cash, but it's revenue is really the top line, and the top line becomes very important is because that's that's the biggest thing in the entire P&L that the company has most control over in terms of how the more you sell, the more healthier the P&L becomes. Because after a certain point, and after depending on your maturity journey of the organization, your below the line expenses cannot be, you cannot really you cannot stop having an office, you cannot stop having a warehouse, you cannot stop having people. So those are fixed costs which as the company matures, you will always need them, and regardless of the sales happens or not, those costs will keep flowing in. The top line becomes one of the biggest lever in driving the overall P&L, and hence it is called the top line. And the cost of goods sold or the cost of revenue sold is really the total cost of goods or revenue, is the amount of money that the company spends to create the products or to create the services. So for example, and this is directly related to the revenue. So there is no fixed sort of thing. It's so basically, for example, we are talking about making of chips. So what is the raw material cost of potato? What is the raw material cost of the packaging? What is the raw material cost of sourcing the plastic? How much does it take for me to make that one bag of chip or a box of chip? That that's really directly related to the product or the services you're selling, hence its cost of goods sold. And once you do that, and the reason this is again important is for you to understand, even though you don't directly control from a sales standpoint, is you need to know how expensive a product or a service is. So the better you have an understanding of this, the better it will be for you to manage your gross profit margin, right? So basically, the gross profit margin is really net revenue minus your cost, and it tells you how much money a company has left over after they have spent what they need to deliver the product. So basically, I if my gross profit margin is healthy and positive, which means I have decent money left to invest in R&D, insights, marketing, people, building the infrastructure for future growth, driving the long-term planning. So hence a healthy gross profit margin is a must. However, depending on the industry you are in, and depending on how competitive your product is or not, uh, you know, balancing that healthy gross profit margin with, sales can come sometimes become a challenge. So if you have a moat in your brand, or a clear competitive edge in your brand, which can command the higher pricing, then it's great, because then you can command the gross profit margin. But if you are a B brand, or a Me Too brand, or if you are a new brand, you will always be trying to compete against the industry margins that is there. So your gross profit, your ability to drive a healthy gross margin will always be a question. Then we talk about the operating expenses. After the gross profit margin, these are the operating expenses, which is about running the business, which is normally divided into three categories, which is research and development, sales and marketing, which is your marketing expense, your general administration, which is your, salaries, your electricity, your security, your rental, etc., etc. These are your fixed expenses. Why it is important for you to understand these expenses, while and this is more from you understanding your customers' fixed expenses. So for the more you have an understanding on where your customers are spending their money, and whether or not they are making money at a total P&L level, you will be able to have a very, very valuable sales conversation with them. And we will talk in my next slide about what is it that I mean in understanding the customer P&L. And the last bit, which is EBITDA or operating income, is really the most crux of it, right? Like I said in my beginning slides, that one of the most important question is what's in it for me, and am I making money? Am I profitable? And eventually, the health. health of the business is really dependent on this. If you are not, you can afford to not make money, 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, even, and now, as I see in the industry, even the new startups are started looking at EBITDA and not just revenue when they look at valuation. So this is very, very important. It is also called bottom line because that's really the bottom line. Am I making money or not, right? So the number is positive, it's profitable. If the number is negative, the company is losing money. So this is really important both from understanding your company's profitability, but also customers' profitability. If you see a customer is struggling in making overall money, and if you have an understanding of that, and if you believe what you are trying to sell can help them turn around their profitability, they will be very much interested in talking to you. But if you don't have an understanding, okay, what's happening in their P&L, why are they not making money, or whether you have no understanding of where their challenges are, you will be just having a more transactional conversation, which they're not interested in. So let's take an example here where, I'm again, sorry, I'm going to use a very consumer-led example, but let's say I am, meeting a cinema chain, right? Who is struggling to make money because post-COVID, people are not coming into cinema and they are not making, and they have all these overheads that they are sitting in. They have invested in this screens and they have, invested in this whole refurbishment. There are not good movies coming in. So if I have an understanding that at a P&L level, they are struggling, right? They are not able to, cover their expenses, and they are my conversation would with them as a customer would be very different. I would not say, hey, chalo, let's, take this many boxes of cans of Coke and take this and take that. I would come to them with a solution saying, hey, listen, I understand, you are struggling. Maybe if you take this, let me help you sell this product that is healthier margins for both of us, instead of, let's say, a more expensive product for them. And then, slowly we will build this together, and you will, at least you will, for them, at least you will not have to pay me so much. Or maybe can we work on a credit terms for, let's say, instead of giving you 7 days, I'm ready to give you 14 days, but let's continue to build the business together. So what happens in this example is you are really you are coming from the space of customer's pain point. You are understanding, you actually understand why it is important. Why can your customer not buy your products the way they did in the past? If you didn't have this understanding of their incomes and whether they are making money at an income level or not, you would still push them. Arey, aapne itne din se maal nahi kharida. You haven't bought this. You haven't bought this. Take it, take it, take it, and then he will get irritated, and you eventually lose the sales. So that's where I think having that bottom line understanding of what drives your business, but also what drives your customer's business, is what will be absolutely effective in driving your sales strategy. See, the thing in a startup world is, like I said, when I go back to this slide, if you're a Me Too brand, you will at least have some understanding on what is the industry gross margin that the industry is really operating at. So let's say you are in a business of you know selling uh, let's say you're in a business of selling furniture, right? I mean, you're retail into furniture. Now there are already a couple of companies that are doing it. You will at least have some understanding that आपका competitor is on what gross profit margin. Now, if you believe that your product is stronger than them, or then you have two options. Either you can improve your gross profit margin than them and do a premium pricing here, or if you want to drive sales faster, you will basically benchmark your gross profit margin below them, and you will have your own understanding of what it takes for you to manufacture your brand, and hence you will back your pricing to the customer accordingly. So start with gross profit margin. Eventually, when you start building your fixed expenses, you will realize So let's say if I'm doing a 27% profit margin business, my industry is at about 30%. So I'm going a little below the industry, but because I need to plan, I also need to build my sales. So I use that margin difference as an advantage that I'm giving to my retailers or to my customers to build to do more business with me compared to my competition, right? Basically, if there is no other product differentiation between you and your competition, then most companies does a margin play. Okay, I'm getting a better, your my product is as good as theirs, but you're gonna get it little cheaper from me. So and that is because I'm trying to build the business. So that's how you will start. Then you will look at your fixed expenses, how many people you need, what marketing do you need to do, what research, and then eventually when you realize okay, in 27% margin I'm not able to make my business profitable even in next 2 to 3 years, is when you will need to take margin correction and hence pricing correction. You can, that's how you would use a PNL. So to my point earlier, if you are a new startup, start with understanding, and if you're in a red ocean kind of a market, and start with making sure what will give you maximum top line in a sustainable manner. So the other mistake most company do is sales. In order to increase sales, they over discount. So they dump at a very discounted rate. So what happens is the moment, which means your margin becomes very low, and which means you will never be able to recover money. And you're also, bringing the equity of your brand down by over discounting. So make sure if you have an understanding, ke mera, what is my fixed expenses going to look like? What is my expenses of making the product is going to look like? Basis that I can only afford to go to a margin level of X%, so that at least in next 2 to 3 years, I will become positive at an operating income level. So moving on to the next piece, which is why it is important to understand customer PNL. And this is what I was trying to first get at. So these are the basic list of questions I have always looked at when I'm working in the sales with my customer, right? Understanding PNL will strengthen your relationship with your customers and it will help improve your sales. So does your product directly affect your customer's PNL, right? An instant reduction on a or is it reducing their expenses or is it increasing their revenue? These are the only two levels of a PNL, right? Either you grow your top line or you reduce your expense and hence you make your PNL profitable. But either ways, are you really, whatever it is that you are selling, is it really impacting their PNL or not? And that is one of the things that you would have to, you should ask and understand. So for example, even if you, let's say in a business where, you are selling energy efficiency, that also reduces the cost of the expenses, right? Unka electricity saving, energy saving, which also affects their PNL. Their operating expense lines come down, right? So all of this, so that's the first question. Again, building on to that, does it affect the expense side or the revenue side? The third was, what type of industry does your product or service best serve? So if you have an understanding of the industry that the customer is in, are they making money or are they losing money? So basically, you're telling your customer that you have an equal good understanding of their competitors, and if they are, if and this is another like step forward from beyond understanding just customer PNL, is understanding at what margins and what operating profit levels and EBITDA the industry is operating at. So you can say and you can inform and you can have a joint discussion with your customer, saying, if this is how we work together I can help you make money or more money or lose less money. And that is very, very powerful. Next bit is also very important. To my earlier example of working with a cinema channel, right? If they are losing money, does your product have the potential to turn around the profitability? Now, if you don't know and if you don't understand the PNL, if you don't understand their cost structure, if you don't understand their expense structure, you would have no leverage. Even though your product could have the potential, you won't have the leverage to talk about it because you don't have an understanding of it. So it is absolutely important to know whether your product has that potential or not. The next bit is about articulating, and sales is all about articulating and really selling. But can you articulate the impact of your product or services in terms of the impact of profitability? Can you really, the more informed you are, the more deeper your understanding is on the P&L, can you really do a one-on-one? This is us, and if we engage, this is what it will do to your P&L. Also have a very, when you talk about relationship building, do not come from a space of mujhe zyada bechna hai, or I want to sell more. How do I sell more? And really, really take time and invest in that relationship to understand how does the customer looks at his business. What are their pain points? What are the expenses that he's struggling with? What is it that he's trying to drive? And how do you play a role in it? It's really about what's in for me. The customer is not interested in knowing कि राजीव का sales target है, तो let me help him get his earn his commission, or या आशी को sales head बनना है, तो उसको लिए ये बहुत important, तो मैं इसे खरीद लूंगा. The larger point is he's interested in it. What is Rajiv and or Ashi is bringing on the table for me, right? And the more you answer that question of the customer, the stronger your relationship with will be with them, and the more sustainably you will be able to grow sales. And the last point on the customer side is how does their business affect your deal strategy, right? So how do you develop your deals, whether it's margins, pricing, terms and conditions, credit policy, all of this, you will be able to make much more informed decision if you have the full picture view of their business. So let's say if you are doing a deal with a client for a 1 year service provider, 1 year service of your software licensing. Now, if you know that a customer is struggling in making money because he is sitting on high overheads, or in your past conversation, you know that the industry is struggling in making money, or there is an there is an EBITDA pressure or an operating income pressure. And this is a very simple example, but you will get the gist of it. You will basically design a deal which is not impacting him with a one time hit of payment to you because you're doing a 1 year deal. You might say, okay, let's do a 1 year deal, but the payment will be at a quarterly level, so that your PNL is not you are not really at a quarter to quarter basis. You can then pay as and when you're making money from your customers, for example. So you're not loading them with a one-time hit or a one-time charges, because you know that they're struggling in making the money, and you still get what you wanted, but you are also building a long-term relationship. The other deal strategy that I gave an example was like, if I see that a particular business is struggling and my customer just had a big loss. Let's say if you know that a customer had like like a like a fire incident in a retail store, and you know that he's dealing with a big loss, and your deal is up for renewal, you would, and it has impacted obviously his ability to make money and his ability to drive profitability. You will not just leave that customer because it's a short-term hiccup in his business. He's going to bounce back. But the way you will design your deal with him is, listen, I understand you're dealing with this loss and this issue. Let's work together so that I can help you come back on your feet faster. And we will design a deal where it is a win-win, where I can give you relaxation of payment for first 30 days, or I can make sure that we supply, or I can give you some promotions or some temporary discounts. So that's what I mean, that the more understanding you have on the stress points of your customer's profit and loss statements, on a stress point of your customer P&L, you can affect your deal strat. You can really design your deal strategy. The flip side to that is, which is what my last point, the last slide is about, how do you really understand? Okay, your understanding of your internal P&L. So far, we talked about customer P&L. Understanding of your own company's P&L beyond your sales number will also help you with your decision making. So we have already talked about it, designing your selling price. This is very important, right? As we seen, the top line directly impacts your revenues. Having a better understanding of how to balance your top line and your bottom line growth will help you decide what is the right selling price of that you should sell your product in, designing your discounts, and then coming back to the deal structure. While you understand company's P&L, if you know your own company's P&L and what is it that you are trying to drive as an agenda, you can actually make informed decision on your deal structure. So it's not just about customer, but yes, customer understanding of customer P&L makes it very powerful from a sales standpoint. But even for your own internal company's P&L will really help you in becoming better salesmen. And the last point, of course, is really about influencing your bosses if you work for a company. But I've always seen, and in my experience of moving from finance to sales, I think sales people who has very strong understanding of how does a PNL work, and they bring much more value on the table in all the strategy conversations, not just current year, current month, current quarter, but even future. And they always have an edge over somebody who has a very short term view and of my numbers, my target, and my little world of customers. So basically, let's use an example here. Now, does my product has a potential to turn around the profitability? I'm not saying that I'm assessing the potential of my basis the PNL. I'm not saying whether my product has a potential or not. It's does the potential of my product has the ability to turn around the profitability. Again, I'm going to go back to my example of cinema. Now, what I am trying to sell, right? Does it have the ability for my customer to make his business from negative to positive, right? Does my product has that value that I can add to my customer's PNL that he can shift from becoming negative to positive? So can I really, let's say I'm in a business of selling energy efficient bulbs. Let's make it this way. Now uh, I'm giving a product which basically cuts energy consumption for my customer in a very dramatic manner, because he has a large, his energy bills are pretty huge. Now, if his energy cost, if you have an understanding that his expenses, and you don't have to get to that level कि अच्छा उसका सबसे बड़ा point is electricity bills, no. But if you have an understanding that he's struggling overall to make money, okay? So one of the levers, and we talked about it, there are two levers of making profit. Either you increase top line or you reduce expenses. In either of these levers, do you have a role to play? So if you are giving them an energy efficient solution, you can always go back to say, hey, listen, I have a product which if you use, your energy consumption will come down and your energy bills, electricity bills or energy bills will come down, let's say by 20%. It will have a direct impact on their P&L. So understand what your product brings on the table and how it affects their uh, their profitability is what I'm trying to talk about here. Yeah. So very good question, and I think it's you're basically talking about how you can, if understanding PNL can help you scout for more customers, right? The answer to that is two things. First thing is, do not limit yourself to believe that you need. So don't assume that you can only go to customers who already have a budget for your brand. Why don't you just think little outside of the box and say, how do I influence the companies to actually allocate a budget for my brands like that? So your influence power is not to sell your product. Your influence power is not your influence power is around convincing your customer that they actually need to put a budget for something like this. So for that, the starting point will be to understand the industries that require products like yours, even they are not there today. Don't worry about whether उनके पास budget है या नहीं है. Start with what are these industries where your products will really play a big role. Even if it is not playing a role today, there is a future play to it, right? The evolution of robotics and AI has gone to another level. So, which are these companies that can, really use your technology, your product for them to have an edge in the future? And then once you really look at the insights on that, you shortlist these companies saying, these are the companies where today there is a potential, but then these are the companies where they can get, if they engage with my product today, they can really have an edge tomorrow. And then when you go into to your customer, you are not talking, you shouldn't really talk starting with, I am into this robotics and this is what you should really talk about. Show them what probably, let me tell you one thing. My learning is we come from a place के customer का business customer सब समझता है. हम क्या उनको बताएंगे कि उनको कैसे बिजनेस करना है. But actually it's not true. Sometimes when you are so much into that frame, right? Let's think of it as a picture frame. If you are part of the picture frame, you miss seeing certain blind spots. But when you're outside the picture and you're seeing the full picture, you actually see the whole thing and you say, oh, this could be better, this can be better. So you are that person who can show the full picture of their own business. So don't underestimate the power of your understanding of your customer's business better than theirs. So what you can do in your specific cases, you know, tell them, this is what you're doing right now. And while this is giving you value, if this is the product that we are working on, if you really engage with this product today, आज अगर and look at coming back to the PNL, आप उनके whatever PNL that is available uh, from the customers, competition or industry or whatever is in the public domain, bring that up. If you do this, your sales will go up by X%, your margins, your profitability will go by X%, and then he will probably see, oh, आज मेरे पास budget नहीं है, but I will allocate this budget in my next quarter or in my next 6 months, and then we will engage. So one is, of course, if don't worry about उनके पास budget है कि नहीं. Any company ka goal is to make more money, drive their business. If you bring that on the table for them, they will put the budget on the table. First of all, I think since you use insurance as an example, see, the thing is the sentiment of the product in this particular case is not negative. It's the route in which the product is sell has changed, right? People still need insurances. I still buy health insurance, life insurances. The way they go about engaging and buying has changed. So otherwise, you wouldn't have seen the likes of policy bazaars, really doing well and growing. So what you need to think through is it the fact that people are not buying insurance, or have they changed the way they engage with the insurance company? So how do you, as a service provider of insurance, as a product, really pivot your way of reaching the consumers? Maybe you don't have to do the traditional route of sending in agents at home. Can you really engage with them through apps, through more information, through portals? So that's the other thing, because there are certain industry where the sentiments are completely wrong against, like, tobacco or cigarettes, and but those are also very regulated part of the industry. So there the challenges are different. But there is always, when you say the sentiments are negative, it's not really so much about the product. It's just how the path to purchase, what you call, right, has changed. So पहले क्या होता था, path to purchase was very simple. हमने insurance agent से बात करी, they come home, they sell it, we buy it. Whatever they said, we believed it and we bought it. Similarly, in products, we saw an ad on the TV, we go out, we go to the Kirana store, we bought it. Very straightforward path to purchase. Now the path to purchase have become very, very complicated. People are engaging with the information on online. There are products available on digital. Then there are agents, to your example. Now, before the agent even comes, I am already informed. I have all the information I need about that insurance through information online. What is the price that he's offering? Is it competitive? I have an option to compare against online policy bazaar. That's exactly how I buy my car insurance. That's exactly how I bought my health insurance. I compare quotes and I make the consumer have become the customer and consumer have become a lot more informed in that sense. So when you are designing your product, keeping that customer in mind, you will have to think through these things. Okay, today the negative sentiment is not about insurance, it's the insurance coming through the agents because they are never competitive enough. They give you all sort of promises of stars and moons and they sell you more expensive than what Policy Bazaar is doing online. So do I want to sell my insurance through this route or through this route, right? And that's why you need to really uh, build your product and the brand. So that's what I would say. Have a deeper understanding on, double click on the sentiments of the consumer and try to get to the point on what part of that product has that negative value to it.